Hey everyone, it's Tifa, and it's time for another courageous conversation. In other words, somebody having the courage to make a difference. And we're having a courageous conversation, a conversation about that courage and where it's led her. And this is Annie Schiller. So Annie, tell us a little bit about how your conversation, how this whole journey started for you and what led to why we're having this conversation.
It goes way back to, I was a caregiver for my grandma who passed of Alzheimer's disease. And so I have...
How many years ago was that, Annie? Was that recently or no?
26.
Oh, wow. So you're not as long in this business or world as I have been, but you're plenty long. You're not a spring chicken. You're a well-developed hen. I mean, you've got some meat on your bones and you've done some work, and it didn't just stop with your grandma, though.
No, it didn't. I realized even with my grandma that there was when she started having these outbursts of anger and such, there was a good friend of mine that was going to school to be a nurse practitioner. And I reached out to him to ask him some questions, because this sweet, wonderful woman all of a sudden is having these outbursts and things flying out of her mouth. Grandma never swore. And so for a caregiver, I was just like, I didn't know what to do.
Calling you names and claiming you've done stuff and you're mean. And it's like,
all of that. All of that. And, even back then, he just gave me a few simple things. And those few simple things made all the difference in our relationship and also bringing purpose to her. And even then I had this aha, like, I hope everybody knows if they're caring for someone with dementia that having a few little techniques could really help in so many ways. And so that was early on. And I had such a love for my grandma. She helped to raise me. And I just adored her. And so I was actually honored to be able to care for her, even though it was really hard. So I have a heart for people who are caregivers as well, because I understand some of the challenges that they face. And I also understand there's not a lot of help out there. The doctors couldn't help me. If it wasn't for this Shane Lagora is his name, that helped me, just some simple techniques of folding towels and some things. I just can't.
Your grandma was a doer. She was a doer. She never was still. She always had to be doing things. She gifted people. She gave service. It was part of who she was. It made her a whole person. It made her valuable in the world to her. And so it was super important that she had some of those things to still offer.
Yes, it really was. And she always wanted to help me. She was always wanting to take care of me. And so when I would say, Grandma, can you help me fold these towels? I'm so busy. Do you think you could help me? It was like, it just brought, and I thought, even that little technique, I just wanted to share with everybody that was going through,
like, yeah, could you dry these dishes for me? Could you do this? Could you do this? That would really help me out. I am so busy. Sure, I can do that. That idea that we're in this together, we're sharing this relationship, we're sharing this journey, and we have to learn things so we can be supported in the right way. And if we don't know that, we end up butting heads over things because I'm trying to help you. And in that moment, that's not what you need. What you need is to be helpful, not helped. So yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. And she always had a connection with dogs like I did, and animals. So it goes way back to her. And that little dog Skip helped her so much, just feeding the dog, taking the dog. We would have times of playing with the dog. And it just enriched her life. And that was
Well,
my goal, which is still the mission.
Yeah, she was using those skills that she had. She wasn't losing abilities. She was maintaining abilities because she was helping the dog. She was taking care of the dog. And yet, just like you, the dog was taking care of her, but nobody needed to tell her that. And you must have had a really special dog too, because I will say, just like not all people are meant to be care partners for people living with dementia, if you want to give care, that's sometimes a really bad match. But care partners, oh yeah. When we partner with someone, and not all animals are meant to be partnered with people living with dementia. Some animals are so good and you can figure it out, but it does take paying attention. You can't just assume an animal will be great at this and comfortable with this.
Yes. That's so important. You're so right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you had animals. You've always had animals, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we're like. Yeah. I feel it. I mean, we've always had animals, always. I mean, and whenever something got hurt or injured, people would bring it over. I mean, raised a fawn, raised rabbits, took care of ferret. Not my favorite. Did I say that out loud? Mm-hmm. Yeah, turtles. I mean, I've raised all kinds of things. Now, dogs are my absolute favorite, horses and I think, but others are good. What about you?
Yeah, I often laugh with my family and say I'm kind of like the Jungle Book girl because I was the youngest. My brother was 7 years older, and so I was kind of the last one. And my animals helped to raise me. I was with them all the time, the horses and dogs. I didn't have friends. We were in a rural community on my grandparents' farm, and there wasn't a lot of neighbors. And so, I can remember playing Monopoly with Festus, Shorty, Muttley all around me. And, they were just my family, and so I was always close to dogs. And, over the years, my whole family's known it. I've always trained dogs since I've been little. It just was a natural thing. And horses. And so it's just evolved, over the years. I quit the main job that I had a salon years ago and went into full-time. We have a business, a boarding, daycare, and training facility with dogs. And it didn't surprise my family. Then when I became a professional trainer and just therapy work is my love, it just fit. It just
all fit. So you have the animal piece going on and the ability to appreciate visual cues and audio cues and physical cues that they give. And you're also really good at giving those cues.
One of the things I think that's helped me with having my animal background is oftentimes I would say to families when I'm trying to help them when they're very frustrated, whether it's in spiritual care or whatever. And when I say to them, there's more ways of communicating than just verbally. And I think it's easy for me because of my animal background, the communication that goes on is very little verbally. And so, but a light bulb goes on with them, like it's the first time they thought like, there's another way to communicate other than speech, other than talking. And so I love that, just to be able to even give families that little like, oh, I didn't even know that was possible,
Yeah.
Be able to communicate with my
so we have this animal skill development that you've had, and you supported your grandma before and through and to the very end. But part of that now, somehow those sort of combined into providing support for people living in residential care in facilities. So explain a little of that, because that's part of your journey and part of what happened is you went from grandma to many with that animal support, but also, as you say, with spiritual support as well, because that was another piece of your mission or the work that you did.
Yes. So it all started when my mom asked me, her church would go to a local nursing home. And of course, my mom knows my sweet spot for our seniors, always have, and my love to train crazy tricks for my animals to make people laugh. So she asked me, Annie, will you bring Amos to the nursing home as a special guest and do some of your tricks for him or whatever?
Okay, so I want to be real clear that when you first started, you were an act that would come out and entertain people, because back in the day, that's what people were looking for. There was Bible study, there was bingo, there were birthday parties, and then there were entertainment. And, that's, other than that, there was care.
Yeah.
But it was seen as two different things. And so you first entered the scene as, you guys were the show.
We were the show.
And
we would dance and do these dance routines. And even now we do to I Fly Away, because they love those old hymns.
They love the hymns, yeah.
And the joy and the laughter that it brought, that this dog brought, that staff couldn't, that I couldn't. I have so many stories of how the dog or the horse, I have a therapy horse that goes in too, that connect with people and to bridge that gap. And it just brings them out of their shell. And you add animals and music, and all of a sudden it's just amazing. And
the window opens and here they are. They are that person that they were, but different. There's no denying that. But boy, oh boy, do you get to see the joy and the pleasure and the purpose and the value, and language starts happening that isn't swearing. It's good language, and it's asking questions and being curious. And people suddenly, boom, they're there telling you stories.
I never get tired of that. Even last night we were at a care facility, with our therapy dog group, because it was Halloween. So we dress up in crazy costumes.
Yeah.
And we just make people laugh. And to see that, it's still as rewarding as it was 20 some years ago. Because so many people just are in those facilities with not much enrichment or care, or just have somebody to talk to, or have a special visit from an animal, whether it be a dog or a horse. And I just feel like that's my purpose,
So you went from group work to individual work, and then you went to therapy. And that is a very different thing than entertainment. Entertainment is therapeutic. I'm not saying it isn't, but you went into spaces and places that allowed people that ability to truly connect and use abilities and skills and to engage in ways that otherwise weren't so possible or were not how it was working. So during all that time, and that's years of doing this now, you got chances to observe other interactions that were going on, or in situations that came up. And over that time, sort of your work stayed. You continue to do the work you've always done to fulfill and enrich lives. Both you do spiritual work as well. You do Sunday services, and you do that work as well as animal-assisted and supported therapy and work. But now you have something more than that on your mind.
Yes. As I continued, especially in this one facility that I've been volunteering for close to 25 years at this one facility. When you're there a lot, at this time, I'm there 3 days a week as a volunteer, doing animal assisted activities and therapies during the week. And then Sundays, the church service and spiritual care. And then oftentimes they would call me in because the animal would gravitate to a certain person, and they would, Annie, can you help so-and-so eat? Or Annie, they're having a hard time taking meds. And they knew there was the connection with the dog. So then staff would call me. So over the years, I've just seen the decline in care. Mm-hmm. And this particular facility was sold. And I really, it was horrific, some of the things that I started to see. I started to see people sitting in their feces. And I walked into a room one time, and it was horrible. There was human feces all over the floor. Mm-hmm. I seen, and to me, even to this day, it pushes me to do what I'm doing now, advocacy wise and legislatively, because there was a tragic death at this facility because of neglect. And after seeing months and months of this decline in care, and I got close to the staff during this time because I'm there so much. So the CNAs and them I'm close to, they're getting therapy visits from the dogs and the animals as well. So I started asking questions because we went one time and with our group actually, and there was a staff member in a memory care unit that was screaming at this lady. You remember my name. Come on. You remember my name. You know what my name is. In our group, my eyes were just like, are we really seeing this in a memory care? You know, I was shocked. I was angry. And as I started to observe, I started to see a lot of the staffs manhandling these people to get them to shower. I mean, and I would say, how about if Huckleberry or Preacher would walk? Let's, and at this time, I didn't even know who you were. So I was just trying to use techniques that I used with my grandma, to be honest with you. I've had no formal, So I started seeing this stuff and my heart is grieved and it's angry, and staff is telling me they've never had any education whatsoever in how to handle people with dementia. Now, this facility that I go to broadcasts and advertise as memory care. They actually say they have an Alzheimer wing, an Alzheimer house. So they're very specific. So when I started asking staff this stuff, and across the board, they said, no, we've never had any. I was shocked, I'll be honest, because not being in the medical,
right? You have to have that, right? You must have to have training if you're going to say this and tell people you do this and offer this. You've got to have that, right?
Well, and family, I can't even tell you how shocked, and I still am to this day, and that's why I'm pushing what I'm pushing now, because there was a tragic death here at this facility, and that's what started, because this was a veteran. This was one that I would see every Sunday. And he fell in the shower and hit his head, and they tried to sweep it under the rug. Didn't want to give him a funeral, and here's one of our veterans. Didn't want to put an obituary in because he had no family. And some of the people that I fall in love with is because they have no family.
They have
and
no one else. They have no one. Yeah.
And I'll be honest, that, I don't know how else to say it, but that put a burr under my saddle pad. And
and that's not a good, and for those of you who don't horseback ride, you do not want to have a burr under the saddle pad, because you and the horse are not going to be in a good way. That horse doesn't like the burr any more than you do. And it turns out that when you have it in the saddle pad, you need to pause, get off the horse, deal with that burr, or it is never going to get better. And so even though I'm betting you continue to do lots of work with your animals and spiritual care, because you weren't letting go of that and giving up on that, but you added an element of timeout. This isn't okay. I mean, I can't think this is okay. And so you had to educate yourself, though, didn't you? You had to go find out. So you can actually do this in this state, and that's not illegal. To say you have this and to not have training, is that true? And what's the answer for your state, Annie?
Well, because of all that, I contacted my state representative, Brana Colley, who is a champion in the fight. She is wonderful. And she has come out to the ranch and did stuff with us in the past. And I knew that her dad had passed of Alzheimer's. So she's got, a
personal connection.
Personal connection. She's not afraid to fight for the rights of those for better care. So I contacted her because I was at a loss. In fact, she was on vacation, and through a friend of a friend, bless her heart, she called me on vacation and I told her about this death. in which there was an investigation and all of that. And I learned some more laws that Michigan needs to change due to this. But through that, after sharing and documenting, I started to just do some homework. So I started calling and emailing Laura, which is our licensing and regulation, because I wanted to know what the laws actually were.
Rules. Yeah.
Yeah. And through that, Brana, we had a task force, so to speak, that was myself, Brana, some physicians, which was wonderful to see what we could do for Michigan to mandate that these places have some things in place for education for dementia, especially if they're advertising.
Like, if they say they're doing care for people living with the brain changes of dementia or Alzheimer's, Lewy body, whatever, if they're saying they're doing that, then they have to have some training, at least, in doing that, or they shouldn't be able to say that. That's like false advertising.
It really is. And to jump ahead a little bit, I was just at the Capitol talking to our Senator Dale Zorn about this particular issue, because it's heavy. It's still heavy on my heart. And he said to me, that sounds like fraud. And I said, you're exactly right. And this is why.
Seems like it would be, wouldn't it? You would think that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and it was actually Brana through months and months of understanding, trying to understand our laws in Michigan, and how certain facilities are licensed under makes all the difference.
Yeah.
But it was Brana that actually told me about you, because when I'm talking to her about like what's all that's happened in these facilities, and I can't believe what I'm seeing, and people being manhandled and screamed at and all of this stuff. She says, do you know who Teepa Snow is? And I said, who?
Oh.
I didn't. This wasn't my lane, before.
Right.
And the first thing that she said to me was, she showed me, and she went like this, and she goes, when somebody
this is the visual amount that people can take in.
That little thing is brilliant, though, and I've used it so many times as when you're approaching people, even with dogs, to think about, don't come up from the side. I mean, that stuff, and I'm like, that's brilliant, and it makes sense. So anyways, well, she's the one. And so through that, I started just everything you had on YouTube. And then Tammy, she introduced me to Tammy.
Tammy Jewel,
one of your pack trainers. In fact, I'm going to her facility later today with a puppy.
I said, hey,
I will.
She'll take it. I know she will offer, and she will go.
She will. She's wonderful. And she let me borrow all these videos. And so through this, I become like a little Teepa evangelist, and I've never met you, because these techniques, I want to get into every facility, and I want to help families to have a better relationship with their loved one until the end, and maybe keep them in the home longer if they can utilize these techniques and the understanding. And the way that you teach is so practical and simple that people can actually use it. So that's how the whole started. How this started and
how it grew. And then there was COVID, but now that was a pause. We had to take a pause. A lot of things pause. But you're back and you're active again, because the answer hasn't changed. People can still say they do this without any training at all, and depending on how they're licensed. And it's time really to say, no, dementia care requires some awareness, knowledge, skill, and frankly, competence. If you're not competent, this is really hard stuff to do if you don't have the ability. It would be like giving somebody a puppy and say, well, do the best you can, and we'll come back in a year and see how it's going. And it's like for 6 months, and it's like, whoa, wait, there's more than just reading about puppies, and who knows who will, but trying to figure out how you help a puppy turn into a dog that is going, there'll be a dog. The question is, will the dog fit well into what it is that we're creating, which is a community? So we're trying to do that. And so the work you're doing is both in this moment, supporting people spiritually, physically, emotionally. And in the communities that you go into, you are still offering to support staff and families and the people who are living there. But beyond that, you're also raising your hand and going, we need help over here. This is not going the way we want it to go or it should go. So let's quit pretending like it's all right, and let's really focus in on what can we do to make it better, not to shake our finger at people, but to really make this work better for everyone. Because
Yes. And that's what I keep just banging the gong, because I just feel it's such a need all over, but I'm focusing just on what I can hear.
You're working in Michigan, but that doesn't mean it's not the case all over the US, all over the world. I mean, what we know is this thing called dementia, or brain changes that come with it, are so poorly appreciated and understood. And the care support that's needed isn't rocket science, but there is an art and a science. Just like working with animals, you've got to have that combo of being able to modify how you do what you do to match what that animal is able to handle in that moment and what's being asked. I mean, because we've got to quit asking people to do something they have no idea. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
For anybody.
Yeah.
So, Annie, we are super excited to have this conversation because you are making a difference. And we will also make sure we have some links there if people want to know more about your animal assisted work or the work that you're doing in Michigan with the legislative effort, as well as just the advocacy issues. Because I think the work that you're doing is basically similar to the work we're doing, because we have that. I mean, it's really connected because we really do believe in the value and the meaning of engaging one another in this and not pretending like something's okay when it isn't, but also not just shaking our finger and saying it's not okay. It's like, let's try this. Why don't let's try this.
Yes.
Yeah. So looking forward to more conversations and more interaction. And we're working, actually, you and I have talked about the possibility of creating something that focuses a little more on using animals in a really responsible and effective way to support people living with dementia and their families and the staff. Because we believe that there's more to it than just, here's a dog. Here's a fish. It's like, people like fish, and it's like, some people like fish, some people like to eat fish.
Right.
I have a friend who loves chickens, and it's like, we don't want to get the chicken real close to me. My grandma taught me how you get rid of it and make dinner.
Oh, but no.
Only in the fall.
They can be a powerful caregiver, like you said, if our care partner, really.
Care partner.
Animals can. And not only activities, but true therapy.
Therapy, living my life, getting me up and walking, getting me to visit and socialize, getting me to come back and stay somewhere where I may not be interested in staying otherwise, even through that doorway we call death.
Yeah.
For some people, having an animal present during that eases that transition.
Yes, I've been in those shoes quite a few times. And as hard as it is, I'm also honored, that I could help to facilitate that kind of comfort in the last stages. So that sitting vigil, keeping vigil.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Annie, so much for your efforts, your time, your history, your story. And I'm sure that we have a lot of folks out there that might have some questions. If so, let us know. If you want to hear more or hear something different, please let us know. Annie, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been such an honor to be able to get to chat with you.
Hi, I'm Tifa Snow, and you just found our YouTube channel and watched one of our videos.
I'm the owner and founder of Positive Approach to Care. Thanks for watching. And if you liked, if you have a comment about, or you would, please share it with people you know. Oh, and if you haven't yet done it, consider subscribing. We'll let you know when the next new video comes out. And you might want to visit our website, www.tipasnow.com, where you'll find other resources as well. See you there.